Okay, so here's a little bit of hopefully a helpful tip for you if you are like me and you're working with um, sound effects, dialogue in game or film, and how to use multiple markers to quickly export things if you're like me and you are always forgetting to turn the the dialogue from a film or the sound effects, the diegetic stuff off before you export when your team has helpfully sent you effects. So what I'm working on here is a project that's a little death music cue. It's only short. It's a really good example to show you. And so I thought I would. So as you can see, I've got multiple tracks here, marker tracks here. So you've got a marker track that I use for navigation. And I have created various keyboard shortcuts in Keyboard Maestro to help me out with that, to move between things and to select different tracks. In the Project Logical Editor, you can see that, let me just open the Project Logical Editor. You can see that I've created some tracks, commands to switch between the different marker tracks that I'm using. So you see that the media type is a marker track and the name is equal to markers export. And so if we apply that, that will activate the track. You can't actually see that that track is active because I need to open these up just a little bit. And you can actually do this with a mouse. You can click on it, but I hate mousing around. So I've set this up. So normally I will be in the navigation markers. That's what I use mostly, and it's just nice to have I use export markers and rename them often with a lot of information here, especially when I'm working on production music and such, and they want the you know they want the name of the track and the tempo and the key and all that sort of stuff and what version it is. So I find that really useful in Cubase. But then I have a sort of a markers track for just bouncing around the project, which is really useful. So I like to have both. And if you're working in game audio and you're doing a lot of sound effects, you're probably all over this because I know people use multiple markers and you can export innuendo directly to Wise and whatnot, and that's great, jolly good. And I've created all of these visibility shortcuts. I'm using an app called Keyboard Maestro. So if I wanted to focus on my, let's see, what should we focus on the strings? Great, I can do that. And we just see the strings. This is done using scenes with the excellent presets from Metagrid and Luke, who did a load of work on that, and that's really kind of him to have donated that to the community. So well done, really cool. I'll put a link to his channel in the description actually, because it's worth checking out. He's always tinkering and coming up with new genius ideas. So I'll share that, and I would strongly suggest checking that out. So it's really good. And then I've created a load of things in Keyboard Maestro. So let's open Keyboard Maestro up, and you can see that I've created. So let's see. I've got I'm building this. This is a work in progress. So I'm kind of creating an awful lot of different commands for all the different sorts of things I do. I do a lot of stuff. So one of the things that I've done, because in Keyboard Maestro you can press a key and that's great. You can run a keyboard shortcut, but you can also select so there's the fixed velocity will run a keystroke, but also you can bypass keyboard shortcuts and just select a menu function here, and there it is. It's in edit macros as well. You can gain access to all these macros that I'm going to show you how to create in a minute. We'll come to that shortly. So, but yeah, you can choose a lot of menu items. Not everything is there, but an awful lot is there. So I find that really, really useful. And you can do things. I've created up little things, little macros like little commands like, so I want to show tracks with data, bang. And that's really helpful when you're working in larger templates and you've got projects that are like this and they're not using everything. I find that really, and then it's just the work of a minute to open the master folders. I know you can see I've named things with subfolders and master folders, so I've got a little bit more granularity over what I'm doing in terms of visibility. So I just close everything up now. You can see it's nice and simple to work with. And you can obviously assign keyboard shortcuts to all these things, but I'm just useless with keyboard shortcuts and I always forget. So yeah, I just don't use them. So let's talk about this macro that I've set up now. So what I want to happen is that, because I've done it enough times now that I want to make a point of not doing it again because it's getting a bit embarrassing. I want the dialogue and the sound effects tracks. There's no dialogue in this particular project, but often there is a dialogue track. I want the dialogue and the sound effects to be muted before I do anything. I then want to select the export markers cycle marker track, and I then want to open the export audio mixdown window. So here is the clever bit. In the key commands window, you can see that I've got all of my commands up here. Let me try and find the navigation. It won't do it. There we go, activate navigation markers. And that's there, and I've not bothered assigning a keyboard command to it. You'll see why in a minute. You can, obviously, if you want to. But you can see here, if you go down to this macros section, you can, you can daisy chain. That's what a macro is really, daisy chaining simple commands, and you can just have one thing follow on from the other. So in the process project logical editor, I want to mute the dialogue and the effects. So that will run this command. I probably need to close that window first. Project logical editor. So I need to mute dialogue and SFX. There it is. So if the track is called, if the media type is equal to an audio track, if the name is equal to dialogue, or if the name is equal to sound effects, the track operation, we mute, enable, we turn it on. Really, really simple. You can run it obviously from there and you can see what's happening. And that is now listed. Once I've created that command, you can see it's also listed here in the key commands window. So let's find that. It was export. I'm going to be looking for these forever. Let me do this in this way instead. There we go. Mute dialogue and SFX. There we go. Great. So once you've created the command, you can see it's there inside the requisite folder. My scroll's got misbehaving a little bit. And then you can just chain, yeah, as I say, just chain these commands up. So I want to mute the dialogue on the SFX track. I want to activate the export markers, and then I want to open the export audio mixdown window. So I'm running that from Keyboard Maestro. So I want to, you can see it there, and that's really simple. I'll show you Keyboard Maestro. There it is. Export audio mixdown with dialogue and SFX muted. It's really, really simple command here. You could also have done loads of this sort of stuff within Keyboard Maestro itself. You can see once you're in Cubase, remember I said you can go to edit and access all your macros, and there they are. I mean, that's going to get pretty extensive. I'm not entirely sure how well that's going to work once I've got thousands of macros, but you get the idea. And that's so helpful because you're taking the keyboard out of the equation. You're no longer using keyboard shortcuts and you're not dependent on them, because obviously, as you can see, I'm building up a hell of a lot of commands, and there are a hell of a lot of commands in Cubase, and I wanted to be able to bypass the that that limitation if you see. So right, without further ado, let's run this command and see if it actually works, or whether I'll get egg on my face. Export audio mix down. Let's try again. Oh no, it's done it. There we go. And you can see that the cycle markers, the dialogue and sound effects have been muted. The cycle markers track has been selected, and obviously don't forget you can set up your cycle marker names there. You can just add those as a wildcard. That's really, really helpful. And then bang, I can export my audio. So I hope that's been of use to you. If you've got any questions, do feel free to post them.